Ya, Fraya, ya estamos en clase. ¿Vienes? No vienes. ¿Dónde vas? Ven, bajamos para dar clase. Ven acá, ven acá. Clase. Ya estamos en vivo, ven. Ven, ¿no vienes? Pues ahí te quedas. Ahí te quedas. Di buenos días. Son mis alumnos. Tienen 2 minutos, pero luego tú tienes que bajar, ¿ok? Porque vamos a tener clase. Vamos a tener clase. 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 Ay, ay. Ay, ay. Mira, es que ya están los alumnos. Que ya estamos. ¿Tú vienes? No, no. 2 minutes, guys. 2 minutes. And one cat. ¿Me vas a atacar si voy al pizarrón? ¿Me vas a atacar? Ujú. Sí, 1 minuto. 1 minuto. Uno. Un minuto. Hoping she's going to come down so we don't have to listen to cat toys the entire time. She may not. Who knows? But let's look at the whiteboard anyway. Can you stop making the toy sound? Okay. Enough, Freya. We are starting the class of the 26th of August. So what we're doing today is we're finishing up the second assignment, answering questions 3 and then 4 and 5. We have one video for question 3. You can get it with T2P3. It's going to be about the Fibonacci sequence. We do that one first. Then there is a second video separate for T2, P4, and 5. That one has to do with Turing machines. So that's what's going on today. If you haven't finished the preceding assignments, after we're done, you can ask questions. Remember, you can always ask questions on the Discord channel. It's important not to leave too many things pending because it will damage your performance in the midterm exam. So that's what we are going to do today. Okay, so remember, type something on the channel so that the bot knows that you're here. You're supposed to be reading the study material, including the textbook. There's lots of examples you could be looking at. You can watch the recordings on Twitch or on YouTube afterwards. When somebody helps you, give them credit. You can access the only the questions in either Spanish or in English. We're going to be looking at let's look at the English version today. Always remember to check on the result list that your points are actually there in case you have accidentally used the wrong email to enter the homework. And I entirely forgot to bring myself some water. So I'll get some soon. So I'm going to log on to the homework thingy in English today. We are in assignment 2. We've done questions 1 and 2, so now we're working with the question 3. Let's take a little screenshot so nobody forgets what we're doing. Okay, so today let's first do Python, then whiteboard, and then work with the bot. So that we get 3 different ways of how to deal with this particular thing. So I've asked you guys to be reading the study material, so the good people have, the slacking people haven't, but everybody will catch on really quickly. We're now working with something that's a recursive definition of a sequence. Recursive means that preceding values will define the future values. So if I want to get a new value, I need to do something based on preceding values. So I'm working backwards. So the definition here would be that if I have 2 values, let's put them in a list. I'm starting with 0 and 1. The rule's going to be I get a new value by summing together. I need to add up the last 2 values. So if I take these last 2 values and I sum them together, I get a new value. Then I need to put that new value into my list. Then if I take the last 2 values, I get a new value, and then I put that thing into my list. So now let's automate this. How do I access the last value? If I type f and then in bracket 0, it gives me the first value. If I put a -1, it gives me the last value. -2 gives me the second to last value. So now if I want to add the last value with the second to last value, I could do something like this. So this gives me a new value. Then if I want to add it to the end of the list, I'm going to use the append routine. So I'm going to make an f append and then say what's the value I want to append. So now it added that new value to the end. I can automate this further by appending the sum of the current last and current second to last. So now I can just make my list grow. I could put all of this into a loop. I could tell it, keep growing my list until my list has a desired length. What's the length of my list now? I have 8 elements. How many do I want? My homework says I want 22. So let's make a loop. While the length of f is lower than 22, grow f by adding the sum of the last and the second to last element. So what's the length of f now? It's length 22 now. What does f look like now? It's all of this list here. What's my question? What's the final element of the initial fragment that contains 22 elements? So what's the final one? What's the last one I have now? 10,946, which is the right answer. Okay, so let's take a couple of screenshots in case we were lost. We need to have an initial condition. A recursion cannot start if we don't have a stop condition, a base case. So our base case for the Fibonacci sequence is that the element f0 is valued 0 and f1 is valued 1. Then I make this list grow until it reaches the desired length by adding to the end the sum of the final element and the second to last element. So this way my sequence f grows until the length reaches 22. Then if I want to look at what's the last number that I have stored in my sequence, I can just consult the final element. So now everybody should be able to do this in Python for your own homework. Remember, my homework says 22. Your homework could say some other number, so you need to look at your homework. Okay, can you, Diego, please repeat the steps that I just made? It'll help you understand your mistake, and we can look at the other way of doing this later on. You're doing a very typical mistake, but please do what I just did. Do this f equals 0 and 1. Do this stuff that I just did now. It will make you understand what your mistake is. I don't want to confuse other people right now by switching the way I'm doing this. So I would like to everybody do this thing that I just did now, after which we're going to do this on the whiteboard. Then we'll do this with the bot and I will show you what your mistake was, okay? But let's do it this way first. Little Paul, if you were able to grow your list F to the length that your homework is asking you to do, and you got the right answer, I wrote wrong, it says go, it should say got. No, I can't even type on this computer. Put the green check mark. If you need a little more time, put the confused face. If you're doing something entirely different and you can't participate right now, the sleeping face. If you have a question, the red question mark. Important things to remember, here underneath the while, you have to put white space here. I used one tabulator. You could also use 2 spaces or 4 spaces, but there has to be space here. If you don't put any space here, you're going to get an error. Then after the append thing closes with the parentheses, you need to click enter twice because these 3 points need to go away. They need to turn into these little angle thingies. So enter twice. The space means the append is inside the loop, and the double enter means I've finished the loop. I don't want anything else to be inside the loop. When the 8 people who need more time are on board, we're going to go to the whiteboard and look at how to do this by hand. So remember, when you're done, click again on the confused face to take your confused face off, and then click on the green mark so that I know that you're ready. We're presently waiting on, I don't even know how to say this, Yassi Brick, Edgar, and 6 other people. We can look at the cat in the meantime. Tail, belly, tail. Still waiting on 5 people. 4 people. 3 people. It's countdown, Freya. It's countdown. It's final countdown. And now everybody has a song stuck in their head. Everybody has a song stuck in their heads. 3 more people. Diego, Eduardo. Remember, you need to put the brackets, 0 and 1 to start with. Then you need to use the length from your own homework. Put the space before the append. Remember to put all the parentheses and all the brackets exactly like in my screenshots. You cannot interchange them. Okay, only one person still working on this. Beto? Let me start writing on the whiteboard. More whiteboard, less cat. Beto's typing. Let's wait for Beto. Okay, Beto can do it. Let's go back on the computer and do it together with Beto. I'm going to close my Python and I'm going to start from fresh. Yeah, Beto, you skipped the first step. Let's do it all over again together. So first you need to say that f starts with a 0 and a 1. Then you need to say that while the length of f is less than whatever you need it to be, I'm going to use what Diego had, you're going to append to f the sum of the last element and the second to last element. You're going to press enter twice, and then you're going to look at the last element. I'm going to take a screenshot with all the steps together in one single screenshot. So Beto, what you're missing is the first line. If you don't define an f, you can never add anything to it. I think his condition's fine. What his error says literally is that name f is not defined, meaning he doesn't have a variable called f, meaning he never put the initial conditions into the list. You cannot grow a list that doesn't exist. Waiting for confirmation from Beto that he's fine. I'll get water while Beto gets this done. Okay, Beto's ready now. So now let's look at what would we do if we didn't have Python. So how's this thing defined to begin with? Let's write the recursive definition. So f, we're going to use f to denote the sequence, and then some index. It doesn't matter. I could put an I, an N, an X, a J. Let's use K. So what's f of K? Two different cases. It could be f k minus 1 summed up with f k minus 2. And then the base case, it would be k. And what are the conditions? Let's actually write let's use an if instead of a for. Fk is equal to k if k is smaller than 2. Otherwise, Fk is the sum of Fk minus 1 and Fk minus 2. So let's write this sequence. Let's write here Fk and here k. We start with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these are my indexes. For every index, I can calculate the value at that position. So now notice, if my k goes from 0 to 7, I get a total length of 8 elements. So K7 is the last element of a sequence that's length 8 when I start from the beginning. This is actually what Diego was doing wrong. A lot of people think that if you take a sequence of length 8, the last element would be F8. It's not, because we start from F0. So if I get a sequence of 6 elements, it's going to end at F5. If I get a sequence of 22 elements, it's going to end at F21, because the first one is not F1. The first one is F0. So let's see, if k is 0, 0 is smaller than 2, for which Fk is equal to k with 0. Then k is equal to 1. 1 is smaller than 2, so Fk is equal to k. K is equal to 2. 2 is not smaller than 2, so I need to take the k minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1, and the k minus 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. I need to take the positions 1 and 0. So if I take positions 1 and 0 and I sum them, it's 0 plus 1. That's going to give me a 1. And then this will keep happening because k is now larger than 1. So for this position, I need to take the sum of these two. For this position, I need to take the sum of these two. For here, the sum of these two. For here, the sum of these two. For here, the sum of these two. And that's how it's going to keep on going. So now what we have is a sequence that grows as the sum of the last two elements, the initial condition being that the first element is 0 and the second element is 1. Some textbooks start with 1 and 1, like they skip the 0. They start with the F1 and then they go on to the F2. We're starting with an F0. So when you're answering the homework, you need to begin with an F0. So this is exactly the problem we had here before when Diego was confused. He was requested to give the last element of an initial fragment that contains 17 elements. If it contains 17 elements, like here on my Python, this one contains 17 elements. So what's the last element? The last element is going to be F16. I've taught the bot how to calculate this. Let's see if I remember how. So I could ask the bot to give me F16. F16 is 987. But what Beto was calculating, no, not Beto, sorry, Diego. Diego was calculating F17, which is 1597, which is what he put here. But that's not the last element of a length 17 sequence. That's the last element of a length 18 sequence. So this is a classical off by one mistake. You went too far because you forgot that the first element is F0, not F1. Okay, so now everybody try to use the bot to get the answer to your homework. Remember, if your sequence has n elements, you need to request for the Fn-1 because the sequence starts from F0. Also making a poll. I'm using sequence twice now. So this is a very easy mistake to make. If you're asked for k equal to 22, you just jump the ship and you go straight for F22, but we're not asking for F22. You really need to read the question. It's asking for F21. To answer the question on Twitch, in the exam, you will do everything by hand. Everything. You do nothing on a computer. You do nothing on a calculator. You do nothing on your cell phone. Every single calculation you do by hand on a sheet of paper. And you will send me a photograph of the calculations when you're done with the exam. You will not be able to grade the exam if you don't send me a picture of your handwritten calculations. Of course, in the exam, I'm not going to make you calculate a lot of elements. Just a few, like what I wrote on the whiteboard. Let me get you guys a picture of what's on the whiteboard, because that's really easy. You can sum 5 with 8 on the whiteboard. It shouldn't be a complicated thing. So that's the kind of stuff I'm expecting you to be able to do in the exam, just like tiny numbers. I'm not going to ask you for 20 elements. I might ask you for 10. Okay, so we should be done with this Fibonacci question. Let's go back to the homework and look at the next question. This is a long one, so I need to zoom out a tiny bit. So now for this homework, we don't actually need Python at all. We're going to do this entirely on the whiteboard. And we need to look at this very carefully before we start. First of all, everybody's going to have the same Turing machine. We all have these same rules. If you read the study material, you're going to be very familiar with what's going on here, but I know most of you guys haven't read anything, regardless how much I beg. So let's talk about it anyway. So we have a set of states, K. Then we have our present state that I'm marking with P. It can be one of these. It could be either S or Q or T. S means start, so that's the first state we're going to be in with our automaton. We start in state S. Then we have an alphabet, sigma. So the symbol of the alphabet we're looking at, it could either be the triangle, that means start of input. It could be a 0 or a 1 or a blank space. Then for each combination of present state and present symbol, we have a transition. We have this function delta that takes the state and takes the symbol and tells us what to do. So if I'm in state S and I'm looking at a triangle, it tells me to stay in state S, leave the triangle B, and move to the right. And for example here, if I am in state Q and I'm looking at a 0, it tells me to switch to state T, replace the 0 with a white space, and move to the left. So these are my rules, and this is how I decide which rule I need to apply. We're all going to have different inputs. This is my input, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1. You're going to have a different input. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow these rules to see what does the Turing machine do to the input. And whatever's left in the machine when we reach the state stop is going to be our output. So with this input here, I'm going to get this output. We're going to do this step by step on the whiteboard. First, you guys look at me do mine. Then you will repeat the process with your own on a sheet of paper or in your notebook. It's very important you pay careful attention to what's going on so that we won't be confused. So I'm going to put this table as large as I can here on my screen so I can actually read it from the whiteboard. And the very first thing I need to copy is my input. So let's go to the whiteboard and write the input there. Getting rid of the Fibonacci sequence. I really recommend looking up a YouTube video or reading the Wikipedia page on the Fibonacci sequence. It's very useful and rather fascinating. Okay, so my Turing machine has its input written on a piece of tape here. It's technically infinite. The very first cell always contains the triangle. And then I have an infinite amount of cells here. The word infinite should tell you this doesn't actually exist. This is an abstract model. There is no such thing as an infinite tape. And here I'm going to put my input. You're going to put yours. So mine has 2 1s followed by 3 zeros. Then I have a 1, 0, 1. And all the rest of the tape is filled with blank symbols. So now everybody take a minute to make yours. Yours is going to look similar. You put the triangle first, and then you put your input symbols that are zeros and ones, and then put a couple of empty spaces in the end. Remember, there is an infinity of empty spaces, but you're not going to type them. You're just going to mark a couple of empty spaces in the end. Let's move the camera a tiny bit. I'm going to check that everybody's on board with this before I continue. You don't really, Ulysses, need to be looking at my inputs, but you can see my input on the screen. The rest of the question is the same. Like we have the same exact transition table. Like all the rest of my question is exactly the same as your question. But if you really want to look at it, yeah, I send it at 9:52. But your question is exactly as mine, except for the input. Okay, so now I'm gonna be following my rules. You're gonna first look at what I do, then you're going to do the same thing, but with your input. So everybody's gonna start in state S looking at their triangle. This is our first step. I'm gonna put a number here. My first step is I'm in S and I'm looking at a triangle. What does my transition table tell me to do? If I am in S looking at a triangle, it tells me to do S. I'm staying in S. Tells me to leave in peace the triangle. I'm leaving in peace the triangle. I'm not doing anything to it. And I am moving one step right. So on my second step, I'm going to be here because it told me to move right. It's going to tell everybody to move right because we have the same rules. So when you're looking at the triangle, this particular Turing machine will always move to the right when you're in state S. Then I need to look at the table again. Now I am in state S on my second step, and I'm looking at a digit 1. We're all going to be looking at a digit 1. Nobody's going to be looking at a digit 0. Everybody's looking at a 1, so we all have the same rule again. It says stay in S, leave B the 1, and move to the right. So I'm going to be here. I am still in state S. Now we might have differences. Some of you all will have a 0 here. Some will have a 1. If we look at our transition table, we will notice that it doesn't matter. If we are in S, regardless of whether I'm looking at a 0 or a 1, what the Turing machine is going to do is let it be. I'm going to leave it alone, and I'm going to move one step, staying in S. So I'm going to be in S, leave it alone. I'm going to be in S, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to be in S, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to be in S, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to be in S, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to be in S, and I'm going to leave it alone. Because whenever you're in state S, the machine doesn't modify the tape, and it just keeps going to the right. That's the job of state S in this particular Turing machine. It's going to the right while you're looking at triangle 0 or 1. This gets interesting when we actually reach an empty space, because there's a different rule there. I'm actually going to change colors so that we notice that there's a different rule there. When I'm in state S and I'm looking at a blank space, it will change the state. So after this one, after the 9, I will move here. I will be in state S looking at the blank symbol. And it will tell me I have to switch to state Q. So I'm actually going to have a transition here. It tells me go to Q. And it tells me to leave the white space B, but it tells me to go the other direction. So whenever I was in S, it always told me to go right. Every single time it told me to go right. Now it's telling me to go left instead. So on the 11th step of my execution, I will be in state Q looking at a 1. What does the table tell me to do? When I'm in Q and I see a 1, it tells me I need to switch to T. Other than switching to T, it tells me that I need to replace my 1 with a white space. If you look at the table, you can see that if you were looking at a 0, it would do the same thing. So whatever's written here, we are going to erase it, because this thing says I have to substitute the symbol here with a white space. And then it tells me to go again to the left, putting me here in step 12 in state T. Then I look at what does my state T do? Regardless of what symbol I'm looking at, regardless of whether it's a triangle 0 or 1, T always goes to stop. The machine is going to stop. It will leave the symbol be, because if it was a triangle, it's going to leave it as a triangle. If it was a 0, it leaves a 0. If it was a 1, it leaves a 1. So it doesn't do anything to this symbol here anymore. It leaves it be, and it doesn't move anymore. That's what the dash means. We don't move anymore. So here we simply stop, and we do no longer move. So basically, state T was redundant. It didn't do anything. I could have just gone to stop straight away from Q, and the result would be the same. So I have here a state that doesn't really contribute anything, but it's there regardless. So what does my Turing machine do? This particular Turing machine, it looks for a first empty space by using the state S. When it encounters the empty space, it goes back and it erases the last digit. Remember, I used to have a 1 here, but I don't anymore. And if I had had a 0 there, it would have erased it anyway. So it just goes to the end, and then it blanks out the last symbol. That's what it does. And then there's a state T. That's kind of like your municipal worker, where you see like somebody's digging a hole, somebody else is gathering leaves, and the third guy is just sitting around for like no reason. So the state T is kind of like the supervisor here. He doesn't really do anything. S finds the ending, Q erases, and T is like, go team! And the only thing that T does is stops the machine. Q could perfectly well stop the machine. So whatever your input is, your output's going to be the same thing except for the last digit. So now we're good to answer the homework. Question 4. And of course, I pressed the wrong button on my stream deck. So now we looked at the intro again, but here we go. So where's my homework? Let's find my homework. So if you have an input here, you just double click the input and you copy it. Then you will paste whatever you copied into the answer field and you will erase the last digit. Then you will grade and it will be correct. Because this particular program, this particular Turing machine, the only thing it's doing is taking away the last bit. Okay? So if I had this input, what I have now is this output. So that's going to answer our question 4. Let's answer the question 5 once everybody's 4 is okay. And then let's talk about what does this mean? Mathematically, what does it mean when you erase the last bit? I could make an infinite amount of different Turing machines. There is a different example machine in the study material. And if you look at the PDF files of the old exams, there's a lot of Turing machines there. And I also sometimes ask the question the other way around. Like, give me the transition table for a Turing machine that does a certain thing. Like I could ask you to, what do the rules need to look like for a Turing machine that adds a 0 to the end? Or what does the table look like for a Turing machine that switches every 1 to a 0 and every 0 to a 1? So sometimes you need to write the rules, sometimes you need to follow the rules. In the exam you guys are going to be presenting, I don't think you're going to be actually dealing with Turing machines, because if it's already in the homework, it kind of doesn't make sense to ask the same thing in the exam. So this is something that looks very difficult for people who haven't studied at all. They're like, oh my God, I have no idea what's going on here. What's a triangle? What's the weird U? But once you know how to read this, this is really easy. State S, whatever you see, you will be going to the right, except if you see a blank. If you see a blank, you switch to Q and you go the other direction. If you're in Q, whatever bit you see, you will erase it and you will go to T. And when you're in T, whatever you're looking at, you're just not going to do anything anymore. So it's easy enough to read when you know how to read it. We are waiting for Natalie. While we wait for Natalie, we can look at question number 5. Everyone has the same exact question because the answer will depend on what you did in question 4. So what's my question 5? The number of times that delta is evaluated during the execution of the Turing machine of the previous question with that input. And I've put here 12. Why have I put here 12? Let's go back at the actual, let's take a picture of the whiteboard and analyze the picture of the whiteboard, because that will help us understand what's going on. Okay, so in the picture of the whiteboard, you notice I numbered every single time we did something. So we had a total of 10 times that we were looking at the table being in state S. Then I had to look at the table once being in state Q and once being in state T. So it's one time for the triangle, then one time for every single bit that you had. It's gonna be, remember, this was my last bit here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bits to begin with. Then I need to check the white space, erase, and stop. So let's count. It's the triangle first, then it's the number of bits that I have, then it's finding the white space, which is the ending, then it's erasing the last bit, and then it's stopping. So it's always going to be 4 plus how many bits you had. So if I have 8 bits, it's going to be 8 plus 4, which is going to give me 12 steps. So if you had a 6-bit entry, then you would have a 5-bit output, and it would be in 6 plus 4, which is in 10 steps. So just count how many bits you have, add 4, because you always check the triangle, you find the ending, you erase the last bit, and then you stop. Tons of people are still counting their bits. If you hate counting things by hand, just go to your Python and ask Python. I've uncopied my bits. Let's recopy my bits from somewhere. Copy my bits from here, paste my bits here. You could also ask what's the length of a string of bits. Let me take a screenshot of this as well. So remember, if any of this is confusing, I really recommend you to watch these videos. If it's all crystal clear, then don't look at the videos. If you have any questions, I can't even type, any questions at all, look at the videos first, please. Because the videos go step by step, and since there's no audio, you can make them go as slow as you want, so it should be less confusing. Always please try to read the study material before the class, so it's a little tiny bit less confusing for you because you've already seen some of this stuff. And remember that the study material mentions which chapters or sections of which textbooks I'm recommending you to read to understand more deeply the content that we are looking at. So at this point, if we go to the current results, everybody should have 20 points in M4. So here's a person finishing up. These people are still doing the second part. The afternoon people, they have permission to be slacking because their class starts at noon. But the M4 people, you should all have here 10 and 10. So if there's a question you haven't been able to complete in the previous homework, it's really important you write something on the Discord channel so that me or somebody else can help you. And we should all be finishing the second homework today. For example, this person here, this mechatronics person is working wonderfully. Another person, wonderful, wonderful. So you should all be able to have the 20 points today. And if you have 4 and 2 instead of 10 and 10, please ask for help. Please show us what you've done. In particular, if you have some kind of an error and you don't know what it's what's causing it, show us. Send us a picture of your notebook if you did it by hand. Send us a screenshot of your Python if it's giving you some kind of an error. If you know these people who don't even have any homework done, ask them if there's anything you can do to help them. Let's see if there's any M4s who haven't even put their study program. Nope, I have a couple of afternoon people with no study program, but all the M4s are already doing something. So presently, best participation is with the software students. And 87% have started homework 1, 78% have started homework 2 in our M4 morning group. Any help you need, it's very important you ask me. In preparation for next week, the things that I'm asking you guys to do is, first of all, I would really, really like it if you could go to the study material. You can either read the textbook or you can read the PDF version of the site that has the exercises, but you're supposed to be familiar with all of Unit 1 and all of Unit 2. So all logic and all combinatorics, including stuff that wasn't in the homework, because that's what the first exam is going to be about. The midterm will be about these 2 units. And what we're going to be doing for the couple of lessons that we still have left before the midterm, I'll show you guys here. So on the 2nd and the 9th of September, we're going to be practicing the midterm course. I have a video for that too. Actually, I think the bot knows it. Where I am solving an exam question. This is also one of those no audio step-by-step videos. That's what we're going to be doing in person. You can go to the exam system at any time. This thing's only in Spanish. You can go to the exam system. You can put your student ID. You put the same email you use for the homework. You pick a midterm course and you want to practice. Since you guys are signed up in English, it's going to give you questions in English. If you want them to be in Spanish instead, you will click this box here. I'm not signed up for anything, so it's going to give me Spanish by default, and it's going to give me English if I ask for it. You do not need an access key because it's practice. On the day of the exam, you will need an access key. It's important to write all the calculations by hand on a sheet of paper, and that's the thing you're going to be sending me a picture of. You need to get used to it being one single sheet of paper. On the exam day, you will use only one sheet of paper. So you want to practice this to make calculations tiny and concise. You will load the exam system, And if you get the same bug than I do, it has to do with the order in which JavaScript is executed and the fact that this image is huge. There's an easy fix to it. You can force reload your browser. If you don't know how to force reload, you can go to, no, I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. You can go to the more tools in the menu. You can go to developer tools. It lets you right click on the reload and you can do a hard reload. On most browsers, if you do something like Control F5, it's going to do the same thing. So this is what we're going to be doing the next 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to answer the first half of this. So we're going to be solving question from 1 to, I think I'm going to do it until 12. Yeah, from 1 to 12, we're going to solve them next week. Then we're going to quickly just guess the answers to the remainder so we can grade. And then the week after, we're going to quickly review 1 through 12. We're just going to calculate them. We're not going to really talk about them anymore because we already talked about them the week before. And then we're going to discuss in detail the questions 13 to 20. When you're practicing, if you don't have time and energy to answer all of the questions right, you can just guess the ones that you don't want to think of, because it's not going to let you grade until you've selected an answer to all 20. This is because people might be able to accidentally grade their exams on the date of the exam because they are nervous, and I don't want anybody grading. So if it doesn't let you grade, it means that there's still a question that hasn't been answered. Just find it, guess an answer, press grade. It'll show you the question, it'll show you all of the options, and it will let you know if the one you chose was incorrect or correct. And since it's a practice exam, you can just use the back button to go. So if, let's say, in the first question here, I picked the wrong option, I could go back, I could change the first one, and I could try again. In the real exam, you cannot go back and try again. But in a practice exam, you can do it as many times as you want. So if you think you might be struggling, please try this on your own a couple of times. And next week, we're going to do questions 1 to 12 together. And the week after, we're going to concentrate on 13 to 20 so that everybody's going to get good points. And note here, I was just guessing and I got 8 points. Just guessing. So this is a really easy thing to do. And I really recommend trying to get the 20 because the homework is 50. If you get 20 for the midterm, you already passed the course and you don't have to stress about anything anymore. Anything you do after the midterm, it's just going to be improving your grade. And I think it would be wonderful that a lot of people could already pass the class when we do the midterm exam so that we don't have to worry about anything anymore. So I would recommend you guys use the remainder of today's class to either finish the 2 first homework assignments or to give a little glimpse at the textbook for the chapters that are related. Browse through the study material to look at all the topics you haven't looked at yet before because we haven't had a question in the homework about them. And give a first little go to the exam just to identify which questions do you already understand and which questions do you need help with, so that next week when we work on questions 1 to 12, you're going to know exactly which questions are giving you a hard time and which ones you need help and clarifications with. So that's all for the stream today. I'm going to be staring at Discord until 12 to help everybody get to the 20 points. If you do practice the exam, please take a screenshot of your result. You don't have to include your student ID, just show me how many points you got, because that's a very good way to remind other people that they could be practicing too. So please brag about your results. And I hope that very soon we're going to get people getting 20 points. Remember, all next week and the week after, I'm going to help you guys get better at the exam system so that when we actually present the exam, everybody's going to get wonderful grades. So let me stop streaming. If you want to look at what we did today, again, I'm going to be streaming again in Spanish at noon, and you are welcome to join us again at that time.